Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Veena Rao, and she's here to share with us her new book, Purple-Lotus. Now, Veena was born and raised in India, but calls Atlanta home. A journalist by profession, she's the founding editor and publisher of NRI Pulse, a popular Indian American newspaper. Although her day job involves news reports, interviews, and press deadlines, she devotes her spare time to creative writing and long walks in the woods. Her novel, Purple-Lotus, is a winner of the She Writes Press and Sparks Press Towards Equality in Publishing contest. So let's welcome to the show, Veena Rao.
Thank you, Marianne. Excited to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your book. I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, Marianne, female protagonists these days are feisty. They know what they want. And that's the trend which goes well with the women's empowerment movement. In The Henna Artist, for example, Lakshmi, the protagonist, is way ahead of her time. She's independent, she's liberated, she's single, but she's financially independent. But there's this other kind of woman who is conditioned to believe that she's weak. She's conditioned to believe that she has no control over her life, or she doesn't deserve control over her life. She feels vulnerable or fearful or powerless, or is suffering from some kind of deep-rooted fear. And I was this kind of woman. So my life journey has been all about overcoming my own insecurities and confronting my fears. For example, my biggest fear in life was to speak, just to express myself verbally. And yet I'm here talking to you today. So it was very, very important for me to write about a woman who is introverted, insecure, fearful, but her life's journey teaches her not only to overcome external obstacles, but also to find her self-worth and believe in her own strength. And I believe Tara, my protagonist's story, is a journey toward self-awareness.
Well, just like The Henna Artist, I thought your book, The Purple-Lotus, was so well written. And I love how you interwove everything into the details in the book. And, I think this is why so many women and just people in general are really connecting with The Purple-Lotus, because there is that piece that's within all of us, the insecurity and the doubt and, am I strong enough to do this? And we've always got that chatter in the back of our minds.
Right. Yes. It's very rarely do you see a protagonist who is like Tara, who is fearful and whose life's journey, her journey to, through the book teaches her to believe in herself, but she isn't there. A lot of people are at a place, a lot of women rather, where they feel vulnerable. Especially in these days of, during the pandemic and with the divided world that we live in. And they're not at a place where, they know exactly what they want. So I think it was very, very important for me to speak about a woman who is not, who has a strong core to start with, who shows great strength of character when life demands it out of her. But she doesn't know exactly what she wants to begin with. And I suppose, I grew up invisible in Mangalore, a small coastal town in India, and I was afraid to speak. And I don't mean just speaking up, just getting my mouth to form words. So my childhood, my adolescence, and a big chunk of my adulthood was spent in silence. And there are some perks to speaking little. I became a good listener. I became a good writer. And because I was a good listener and a writer, I became a journalist. So one thing I've learned along the way is that it's possible to turn your weakness into your strength. And
my goodness.
Yes. I suppose the trajectory of my life has made me a lifelong champion of the average, the everyday hero or heroine, both in my day job as a newspaper editor and as an author. Um, so Tara has a character that's complex, nuanced, and deep. Her story is uniquely compelling. She shows extraordinary strength of character when life demands it out of her. And I think it's the same for most of us, each one of us, like you said. We are all ordinary until we realize that we are extraordinary.
Well, and I know you also interweave the sections about domestic violence, which is really kind of something that people are taking a hard look at right now, especially with the time we're in, people having to be connected in ways that, they're kind of, we're all put together quarantining or maybe isolating with people that we might not typically spend that much time with. And so I found it to be very interesting that you would include the domestic violence piece.
Right. I guess, I have a day job as a journalist, and I suppose I felt some responsibility to talk about these issues because I think domestic violence transcends race, time, culture. It happens everywhere. But there are some unique cultural perspectives that immigrant cultures bring in. For instance, where I grew up, we were not encouraged to question beliefs. We were not, for instance, I had no choice but to marry the man my parents suggested for me. It was an arranged marriage. So, and, marriages don't always work out. But some women have more freedom than other women in some cultures to make a choice to get out of their situation or to seek help, or even there's so much shame, a sense of shame and family honor around these topics. A lot of victims don't want to even talk about violence, and so it was very important for me to bring these unique perspectives that some immigrant cultures, for instance, my protagonist Tara is from India. So the Indian American perspective, it was very important for me to highlight this.
Well, I'm so glad that you did because it really gives us a view into a broader picture of just what another society is going through, and in many ways it reflects our own society as a whole as how women are treated. And I really felt that you gave young girls a strong voice by choosing the protagonist that you did, just because, that really speaks to most of us. Most of us are that soft-spoken, quiet person who, every day getting up is being a heroic effort.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Like I said, not many books, have a protagonist who is like that. At least I haven't read many books in recent years, so it was very important for me to do that. Because Tara, even though she is vulnerable or she is seemingly she is an introvert. She is authentic. She is what she is. She doesn't pretend to be perfect. And I think that's how she makes deep connections with those around her. She forms a strong sisterhood. And I think there's so much she has taught me about, forming connections.
Would you say that Tara is a little bit of you and other strong women and women that you know?
Yes, absolutely. I think in terms of personality, like I mentioned before, Tara is who I used to be in my 20s and 30s, introverted, fearful. And my life has been all about overcoming my fears, overcoming obstacles, confronting my fears. So yes, Tara is, although, her story is her own. When I first started to write Purple Lotus, I did not have a story. All I had was I sat in front of a blank page and I typed the title first, Purple Lotus, but I had no story. So I guess I knew what the trajectory of the story would be, but I had no story. So I put my 6-year-old self on on a train. That's how the book opens. So I put myself. That's a trip my family actually made in 1975 when we moved from our home in the northeast of India to my home, my grandparents' home. But by the second page, Tara had evolved into a personality of her own with a story of her own. So my challenges in life are quite different from Tara's. For one thing, Tara, she has this deep-rooted fear of abandonment that kind of shapes who she becomes. And I did not have that. My parents did not abandon me at my grandparents' home. That was completely imagined. But in terms of personality, in terms of feeling vulnerable, fearful, I think Tara is who I used to be.
Well, and I know you also weave in the discussion of mental health within your book.
Right.
Why did you feel that was important to include as well?
Once again, I think we don't talk enough about mental health. There's such a deep sense of shame, around these topics. One of the characters in the book, one of the three characters in the book, is based on real life character, and one of them is my uncle. Tara's uncle, Uncle Anand, is based on my own uncle. His name was Prakash, and he was also schizophrenic. So. He was one of the nicest, gentlest, wisest people I knew on his good days. But, his psychotic episodes affected his own life deeply, and also the lives of those around him, his family, his large family of 7 siblings and their families. So there was such a deep sense of shame growing up. And it was a fact that had to be hidden, that we had an uncle who was mentally ill. And so, the journalist in me, I suppose, wanted to create grounds for a healthy discussion on this topic.
Well, I really applaud you about that, because I think the discussion of mental health is something that's really coming to the forefront, now more than ever.
Right.
Before, even here in the States, talking about mental health or someone who had, issues with mental health, it was looked at as a really bad thing. You didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see how other cultures as well approach this, and as a society, how we can come together and have a more open discussion in regards to mental health.
That is so important, Marianne. And I think we're getting there. In the past 5 years or so, I see a discussion on this topic, and I hope, it'll get more and more. We get more open to the idea, even in immigrant communities such as our own Indian American communities.
So when we look at just the traveling to, the American South, how did that influence, Tara's story and the writing that you did?
Well, the South is not what it used to be. Right? I mean, when you think of Southern literature, you think of, old country, a sense of home, or a church. And there are some characters and there are scenes in Purple-Lotus that, that relate to this. But also the South is changing. There's so much more diversity that's enriching Southern culture. Even the Southern dialect is changing, I believe you're also from the South, Marianne?
I am currently in the South. I am from California. Yes.
Okay. So, the dialect is changing to include words like maybe peach chutney or cinnamon chai. So the South of today is so diverse. And I think Tara and Purple-Lotus belongs to the South. And, I was very excited that Deep South magazine listed Purple-Lotus as one of its top fall reads for 2020. And that to me is the new South.
Well, congratulations on that. Yes, I did see that. I was like, oh my goodness, this is a book we all have to pay attention to,
Thank you.
Well, and it does seem that, readers are looking for something to dive into that will not only give them new perspective, but kind of take them away. And I really felt that Purple Lotus did that in so many ways.
Mhm.
Was it really difficult for you to write this book, or did it just flow for you?
Oh, it took me 10 years to write this book and find a publisher. The first story lacked focus, and because, I had to teach myself. I don't have an MFA, I don't have a Ivy League pedigree. I had to teach myself to write fiction. And I did not even hang out with writers. I'm the first writer I know of in Atlanta. So I had to teach myself draft by draft. And so I did a lot of reading. I read other immigrant authors like Adichie and Jhumpa Lahiri and several others. And with each draft, I think my story got better, my writing skills got better, and the story got more and more focused. It was a lot of rejection, a lot of heartbreak, tears. But eventually I found a publisher, She Writes Press, who's my wonderful publisher. Who are champions of good literature, diverse literature, own voices, immigrant voices. It all worked for me in the end.
Well, congratulations on all of that. I mean, your work is just superb, and you could never tell that, writing wasn't something that's always been in your blood, because it seems like it has been.
Thank you. Well, I used to write as a child. When I was 12, I declared to the world that I would grow up to be a famous writer. But life happened. I became a journalist. And then not only did I stop writing, I also stopped reading because, I had to take care of my life, especially once I launched my newspaper here in 2005. And my writing had come down to just maybe one story, one novel a year, or a couple of novels at best. And so I had to teach myself to write.
Oh my goodness. What a beautiful job you have done. I mean, I'm just amazed by your talent as a writer.
Thank
And,
you.
I'd love for you to share with us just what it was like, writing this book. Because, I mean, did you wake up early in the morning to do it, or just put it away for a long time and come back? How did that work?
Um, well, when I'm writing, I'm like a horse with blinkers. All I can see is the book ahead of me. I take long walks. Most of my scenes are crafted when I'm out on long walks, or I take even longer showers, or I'm just seated cross-legged on the floor, meditating. And that's when all the scenes pop up into my head. But the actual writing process is maybe a couple of hours. That's all, because that's all, maybe in the afternoon or late at night, because I also have a job that I have to take care of.
Well, life happens and you still have to write, right? I think so many women can understand that, because my goodness, we wear so many hats, and sometimes our passions are the last one we get to put on, if at all. And I just really applaud you, because I think you really show women it's like, hey, you can do all these things and still end up writing the book that you really wish to write.
Exactly. It's so important. I believe that, I have this childlike belief in something. Like when I told myself I would write a book when I was 12, that's something I really believed in. And that was something I actually had to do. I had to do it. Not doing it was not an option for me. And so I had to, at some point, make the time to do it. And I wish I had done this 20 years earlier. I'm almost 52 years old. I wish I had done this, even before I moved to the US in 2001, but it never really happened. But like I said, better late than never.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, I'm so glad that we were able to have this book come at this time. And I think it's a perfect time, because you look at everyone, again, we're socially isolating, we're by ourselves for the most part. I think a lot of people are still kind of following that rule.
Mhm.
And so it's so nice to be able to dive into something that will take you someplace else. What did you want readers to take away from Purple Lotus?
I think the messages are universal, whether you are, an Indian American um, or just mainstream, any reader. Or you're a female reader or a male reader, or you're someone in the 20s or 50s or 70s, the messages are universal. There's hope, even if you feel inadequate, powerless, or fearful. And it's never too late to take control of your life. Choose to live, and not just exist. And I also hope readers will understand that not all women who are caught in an abusive situation have the same choices. Some women don't have that choice. They don't have the choice to even seek support or seek help. It could be, a legal situation, or the fear of losing your children or losing custody of your children, or it could even be, lack of financial independence, or even just this shame of talking about it. So I hope this is something American readers realize, international readers also. And I hope women who are trapped in a bad situation will feel encouraged to take care of themselves and to believe in their own worth, and also to seek help and support. And I think that's so important. And I also hope that we as a society can come together and work to create safe spaces for such women, for victims of domestic violence or any other kind of violence.
I mean, there's so many components that go into it. There's no one easy answer, when it comes to that, and domestic violence comes in a lot of different forms. It could be verbal abuse, you name it. And a lot of times women put up with that in order to, make sure that their children are okay. And it's heartbreaking, but I can understand why these compromises of self happen.
Right. Yes. And, even if you think you cannot get out of your situation, I think it's very important to take care of yourself, love yourself, believe in your own worth. And that's the first step, I think. Believe in your worth, and connect with people in some way. If you're an introvert like me, for instance, you don't want 20 people, you don't want to connect with 20 people. Just find somebody to connect with. And also, if you can, shift the focus away from yourself, do some, kindness goes a long way. Even if you're a victim of a situation, just focusing on somebody else's problem might make your problem diminish in importance. Diminish, not in importance, it's always important, but in magnitude, maybe. Especially now in these times of, during the pandemic, it's important to connect with somebody.
Yes. I mean, everyone's so stressed out, and it's amazing how much a little bit of kindness can go a long way. It's just, I think your book really provides that as a point for people to look at, and hope, of course. I mean, I felt there was so much hope that came from your book.
Thank you. Yeah, my book deals with heavy topics: domestic violence, mental health, and family honor and shame. So it was very important for me to weave in, hope. I knew I would lose readers otherwise. In the first draft, one of the principal characters dies. Cyrus.
No.
And, I was just learning to write. And then I realized, no, this is not going to work. There has to be some hope. There has to be hope for a situation, for a woman who strives so hard to get out of her situation. And, of course, I realized that very early on. And I think it all came together well in the end.
So I'm just kind of curious. I'm sure your 12-year-old self made this laundry list of things you want to do. other than being a best-selling author. So what else do you have on that list? Yeah.
Just to be happy. Happiness is a state of mind, I think. I wanted to have a newspaper of my own, which I was successful in launching. I launched a newspaper in 2006. It serves the Indian Americans and South Asian communities in the US, and it's a popular publication now. And that's one thing off my bucket list. And of course, now there's Purple-Lotus. But besides that, just, live my life to the best of my ability and be kind, be compassionate, do as much as you can to uplift other women who are, somewhat, they're caught in Tara's situation. And that's it. Life is simple. If you if you have a sense of purpose and long-term focus, I think, life can be simple. But one thing I've learned, and this country has taught me, that it's okay to dream for yourself and to dream big. And it's okay to create your life and not let destiny create it for you.
I think that those are important lessons, no matter where you are, that you can really create your own life and move forward. I mean, I know you just have this book released. Are you working on another?
A lot of people ask me that. Well, it's still in my head. I haven't had the time to write it yet. But I can tell you that it's based in rural Georgia. And it has, once again, it has a protagonist who is a 30-something woman, immigrant woman, and a 70-something Georgian native who is also a protagonist. So that's all I can share at this point.
Well, hey, we'll take that. That is a great little inside scoop. And I can't wait to hear about that next book when it's ready as well, because my goodness, Purple-Lotus was such a fabulous read. My goodness, we could talk all day long, Veena. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn about your book?
Oh, well, Marianne, I have a website. It's veenaspulse.com, VeenaSpulse.com. That's my website.
Well, Veena, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. It was great to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Veena. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new novel, Purple-Lotus. Purple-Lotus is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. What if you were abducted as a child and taken to another country? You'll want to stay tuned for our next special guest, Veronica Slaughter, who's here to share with us her new memoir, Have You Seen These Children? On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Dr. Veronica Slaughter, who's here to share with us her new memoir, Have You Seen These Children? Now, Dr. Slaughter was born in the Philippines to an American father and a Filipino mother in the 1950s. When she was 8 years old, along with her siblings, they were kidnapped by their father and brought to America. Despite her turbulent childhood, she was able to achieve the American dream through her resilience and determination. In 2017, she retired from her 35-year chiropractic practice in California and moved to the beautiful island of Maui, where she lives with her many animals. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Veronica Slaughter.
Hello, aloha.
Well, so nice to have you here, Veronica, and to share your story. Why don't you share a little bit about it with us?
Sure. My story takes place from 1959 to 1963. It was a period in my life that I've kind of not ever shared as a professional person. Now I always worried about if anybody knew my childhood, that maybe there'd be a lot of judgment. But when I retired in 2017 and my youngest sibling passed away, I decided that if I don't write this story, who will? All my siblings had passed away from accidents in a very short period of time. And I just lost my amazing mother last year. So that was the impetus to say, put it on paper, Veronica, because if something happens to you, no one will ever know the story. And my siblings, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, I want them to know what amazing parents they had and what brought them to where they are now. Because none of our children, I felt, especially for me, really knew who I really was. I had my son at 36 and I was already a successful doctor, but he has no idea about my past. And I felt it was important to document that. So those 4 years, I was born and raised in the Philippines and to a Filipino mother and a Scotch-Irish father. And my father one day took us to lunch and just never brought us back. So brought us to America. And the book is about our journey. The four of us, little children, we were 3, 6, 7, and 9. And the challenges we went through during those 4 years and how we came out the other end, surviving and thriving. My mother spent 4 years trying to find us. And obviously in 1959, there's no Google, there's no internet. I mean, a phone call takes forever and a letter takes 12 weeks to get to the Philippines. So she had to fight and struggle really hard to find us. And the reason why she couldn't come to America was because when my father married her in the Philippines after World War II, he forgot to mention to her that he was already married in the United States. So that marriage was not recognized and made the four of us illegitimate as well. But we were American citizens because of our father. So back in the day, you could slip somebody a little bit of American money and off you go. So yeah, the story takes place from 1959 to 1963, and I find it riveting, and everybody on my social media has said, once you start it, I dare you to put it down. And it's important that people know this isn't about 4 victims. This is about 4 little warriors that found a way to stick together and finally find their mother. So
I found it to be a very empowering story because I think, overall, if we look at just family, especially if we look at family abroad, this is something that could possibly happen in a more common way than people imagine.
Right. And you know what the sad thing is, Marianne, is that a lot of this still happens today, 60 years later. 60 years, and my whole book is told in, as you know, if you read the book, is my 8-year-old self. It's really told from a child's perspective, which makes it more authentic to me. It's the only way I could have written it. I tried writing it as an adult, but it didn't work. So, of course, as you know, writing a book is rewriting a book. So as I'm writing it, and when I come to the end, I realize so much of this is still happening in 2020. Abuse, abduction, child separation, immigration, racism, and all the things that I fought in 1959 that was happening to us, my mother and the 4 of us children. It's still around, and that makes me really sad.
Well, it's interesting because if we look at a book like yours, it helps to shed light on a subject that maybe people are unaware of, don't have education about. So it really starts the discussion on, okay, how can we make changes so this doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, books like mine, it's an easy read. It's 300 pages. I want the public to know, number one, that children are much more resilient than people give them credit for. And number 2, a little tiny kindnesses go such a long way. And when by telling my story, it's really to keep it constantly in the spotlight that 300,000 children are abducted in the United States every single year. And 350 or I read the statistic are abducted by strangers. The rest are abducted by family members. But you know what, Marianne, an abduction is an abduction. He took us from a life where we were so incredibly happy. My mother is an aristocrat, and we had, back in the day, everybody had maids. We don't call them maids today, but that's what we called them in the Philippines. And they were generational, children's children. And we just had an amazing life. And in one afternoon, we went from this perfect little life to in this country where it was so foreign. My English wasn't good. And, people weren't as nice. It was crowded. It was scary. We virtually lived in a car a lot of the time. We lived in so many states. We'd travel state to state in the back of a truck. And I didn't really understand why we were traveling and why my father wasn't taking us back. But I know now it was his way of getting back at my mother, because he wanted to go back to the United States and she wanted a divorce, which is kind of hard in the Philippines, or an annulment because they weren't really married. So he wanted to cause her pain. And the best way to cause a woman pain is take her children. And that's what he did. So I don't know how to fix that, except thank God for social media and people, a child is missing and Amber Alerts. Children are more likely to get found sooner. I mean, it took my mother 4 years. And by the time she did find us or was able to reunite with us, my 3-year-old brother was 7 and had no idea who she was. So, and that's caused a lot of trauma in all 4 of our lives. My siblings, Valerie, Vance, and Vincent, have now passed away, and they all died young, 49, 52, and 57. And I just, by telling this story, I think it really brings an awareness to people. They're reading about children in 1959 and it's still going on. And hopefully somebody will say, you know what, this has got to stop. We have to find a way. But when you're an immigrant and an immigrant woman of color and you come to this country, it's not easy. And my mother was highly educated and she couldn't find a job because she was overqualified. So she had to start applying as a high school graduate, and she got a job. She got a job right away. But it's the struggle that women and children have to go through and are still going through.
And definitely in the 60s, I mean, women weren't even allowed to get credit cards until like the later 70s without their husband's co-signature. So you look at all this and you're just like, wow, okay, things were much different than the ability to connect and how well it, everything came together that you were able to reunite with your mother.
Right. And you know what? Speaking of credit cards and men's signatures, when I graduated from med school and I opened my first office, it was 1982. I went to my bank to borrow $5,000. Now I'm a licensed doctor in the state of California, and I had just recently been divorced, my first marriage, and they would not give me the loan without his signature. And I literally was dumbfounded. It's like, we're divorced and he doesn't have a job. And they said, well, we kind of understand, but we really do need his signature. And I'm telling you, that was the real eye opener for me. And I just decided I was not only going to open a business, I was going to be a very successful business. And I think those kind of things are what drove me really hard. And consequently, after 38 years of practice, I'm now retired on 5 acres on Maui and loving my life. But I did that all on my own. My mother did it all on her own as an immigrant woman with, where people are always saying, I can't understand you. You have such a heavy accent. And all she was trying to do was raise her 4 children. And it was so, so difficult. But my mother is my mentor. She's a warrior. She's an amazing woman. And she taught me to just constantly stand strong. And she used to say to me, Veronica, from the neck down, you're worth minimum wage. And from the neck up, the sky's the limit. Always have your own business. If you don't want somebody telling you what to do, have your own business. And I'm who I am and where I am today because of her.
Was it your mother that really inspired you to follow chiropractics, or what inspired you to follow that field?
I was a teacher. My mom taught, finally, after being a bank teller for so many years and just constantly getting promoted because she's brilliant. She got her teaching credential in special ed and she taught special ed. So I wanted to be next to her. I mean, I'll tell you something. The day I saw her after 4 years, I never left her side until the day she died. She lived with me most of the time and other times when she was living on her own. But my point was that I wanted to be a teacher just like her. So I was teaching and I got into a really severe car accident. And that's what changed my course. I went to several doctors and was not getting well. And then I went to see a chiropractic physician and he helped me. I'd never even heard the word before. And one day he said to me after being treated for about 3 months and I was doing fabulous, he said, you know what? He used to call me Slaughter. You know what, Slaughter? You'd make a really good doctor. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm a teacher. But anyway, he pushed me and actually paid for my schooling. I was like the daughter he never had. He was like 75 years old and I was really young. And that car accident is actually what pushed me into chiropractic. Otherwise, I'd probably be still teaching.
Oh my goodness. What just an amazing, beautiful story. It's interesting the path our lives take. I mean, I know you talk about resilience quite a bit. When you look at your life, do you feel that all those moments made up this, resilience, that you've been able to obtain that most people are really kind of having a tough time developing in their lives?
Well, I have had people tell me, and it's just been so amazing. I write wonderful medical reports. I never really thought of myself as an author, much less a published author. So when She Writes Press picked up my book, I was thrilled. But the most thrilling thing is I just have been receiving so many emails and text messages and Instagrams and Facebook messages saying, thank you for writing my story. And when they say my story, we've all had some sort of challenge in our life that was really difficult. Not my exact story, but it's like you don't have to be ashamed of your childhood because your past doesn't have to dictate your future. But someone asked me, it is so sad. I mean, that you had to go through so much. And I told them that if I had to do it all over again, as hard as it was, especially not seeing my mother, I would, because it really has made me the woman I am today and the mother I am today. And I have an amazing feminist son. And it brought me to a place where I've treated thousands of patients and they have benefited greatly. And I still get Christmas cards from young women that are now, mothers of 6 that I treated when they were in high school. And I don't think I would be that person and have the kind of resilience I do if I didn't have for lack of a better word, such a crazy childhood. I mean, it's almost unbelievable when people read the story. It's like, it is kind of, to me, it's a movie, but when I was writing it, I see a movie in my head as I write. That's just kind of how my memory works. They're like little snippets of film in my head. But what I'd like people to get from the book is, my goodness, if you fall, stand back up and keep moving, because the choices are you can stay down and cry and drink and whatever it does to ease your pain, or you can get your butt up and just push. And if you're lucky enough, like I was, to have a few kind strangers in your life to kind of give you that pat on the back, it gives you that impetus to move forward. And that's why I always say, people don't realize that a little kindness changes people's lives. And it changed my life. It gave me what I needed to, as a small child, to keep going. Because my father, obviously, if you wanted to diagnose him today as sociopath, because he to hurt my mother, he dragged these 4 children all over the place for 4 years, living in cars and in garages and backs of churches and, just crazy stuff like that. But I really feel that it doesn't matter, Marianne. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people think of you or say about you. All that matters is what you think of you. And if you think you're a good person and have something to offer, then get yourself back up, brush yourself off, as corny as that sounds, and just keep walking. And my thing was prayer. I'm a very spiritual person, but as a young person, the Catholics Filipinos are heavily Catholic. My mother was a devout Catholic. And the one thing I had with me in my pocket when my father took us that day for lunch was my little wooden rosary, which I still have, and 60 years later. And if it wasn't for that rosary, I prayed that rosary every single day without miss, sometimes twice if I was really struggling. Between the rosary, my youngest little brother, Vincent, who was 3, and I felt responsible for him, and kind words from the janitor at my school in Florence, Texas, who said to me, I told him I didn't have any friends because I was poor. And he said he didn't have any friends because he was poor. And he told me, but you know what, little one, you're smart. You can be somebody with your life. You don't want to be a janitor when you grow up. And it's those kind of things. And I thought, God, Mr. Jackson thinks I'm smart. And I just adored him, even though everybody else didn't seem to like him very much. So I don't know, it's accumulation of all those little things that happened to me as a child. I'm actually grateful. I am grateful, and I'm grateful my mother lived long enough to know that I'd finished the book. I wasn't able to put it in her lap, which was my goal, but toward the end of her life, when she was in hospice, I sat next to her with my manuscript in a binder, and I read her every word, and she loved it, and she loved me.
Which is most important, always most important, And then hearing the story, how did she feel about hearing this story being told? Because in many ways, it's also, a story of, it's her story. It's a story of, a mom searching for her children,
There was a lot of things. My mom, her memory wasn't so good toward the end. She had mild dementia. I mean, she knew me and immediately, but she didn't remember a lot of the past. But when I read the story to her, because I'll tell you something, Marianne, there were things that aren't in the book, because I ran it by all my nieces and nephews, the children of my siblings, to make sure they were all okay with some of the things, because they knew, they were in shock when they read the advance copy. They didn't realize that about their parents, that they had been through so much. So I think with my mom, I did not, this is the first time, put it this way, that she's heard the whole story. Because when she finally found us, we were so thrilled and so elated and so happy. And she would ask us a little bit about our life the past 4 years. I chose not to tell her a lot of it, because why? It would just make her cry. And she had suffered, we'd suffered, but she lost her 4 children. She ended up in a psych ward for 3 months because she couldn't cope. And she had lost her mind. I mean, we were all dressed up, ready to go to lunch, and we were supposed to be back in an hour and a half, and just never came back. I mean, she just about lost her mind. And so because of that, my reading my manuscript to my mother when she was 95 years old was the first time she heard the story of those 4 years.
Well, it must have been heartbreaking to hear, but at the same time, I think there's so much empowerment that comes from your story being told, because there are so many other people going through similar situations where, they're being ripped from one parent, without, there's no court that's involved giving permission for these parents to take them,
Right. And the thing is, some parents, my mother, thank goodness, gave me unconditional love. I can't say the same for my father, but I'm so grateful I had one parent that loved me to the moon and back. But parents, just from vindictiveness, Marianne, can use their children as pawns or tell their children bad. My father, and not to be a spoiler alert, but in the book, there's a chapter called Where's Mommy? And he got so sick of me asking him every day, because he had told us when we got on the plane, and I was pretty upset. And he just said, no, the plane's full. Your mother's coming on the next plane with Soling. Soling was my personal maid. And I never went anywhere without Soling. So when we landed and they didn't come, he kept saying, oh, well, the plane got delayed. And then she had problems with this, that. And finally, about, I don't know, maybe 6 months into the abduction, I just would ask him every day, when's Mommy coming? Have you heard from Mommy? And finally, he just sat me down and he told me that her plane had crashed and she had died. And
oh my God,
that was, it's even hard to talk about. But I think because I was so religious when I was little, and I had already witnessed my father in 6 months telling people, strangers in restaurants, like lies. And I knew they were lies, but I mean, what are you going to say? I wasn't going to say anything. I mean, my father he'd kill me. So I would listen to him lie. So when he told me that, after, screaming my head off and staying in the bathroom for probably close to 2 days, I I kept telling myself, God wouldn't do this to me. And he's lying. He has to be lying. And I just prayed my rosary harder and harder and harder. And my sister said, I know you're upset, but, we have to come to terms with this. And I kept saying, no, I know she's not dead. I know it. So what my point is that parents do horrible things to their children to get back at the other parent. And who does that? I mean, our parents are supposed to love us and protect us and keep us from pain and not give us pain. And parents that do that, I mean, they have no business having children, that they can't see beyond themselves, even at a price to themselves, to give their child unconditional love. I mean, my son, I have one child. When his father and I got divorced, his father and I had great issues, but every day I would tell Francis how much his father loved him, because I've been there. You don't tell a child, your personal stuff. He was so bad. He was this and he did that and he did this. Why would you tell your child that when they're little and they don't really understand? Those are our adult problems. To put them on the innocent children, that's what's just heartbreaking to me. I mean, I see it. I've seen it when I was teaching. I see it in my practice. Women that come in that have, I've heard every story you could possibly want to hear. And I'll tell you something, because of my background, Marianne, there isn't one single person that can come into my office and tell me something that I would go, oh my God, really? I would never think that, because I've been there, done that. There wasn't anything anyone's ever said to me that I hadn't been through. So it gave me such a sense of compassion. And I'm a huge hugger, and being Filipino and being a transplant Hawaiian, it's the hardest thing about COVID right now is that I can't hug people as much as it's my way of passing aloha to them or giving them the breath, the love. So yeah, I'm grateful for my background, because it's made me a much better doctor.
Oh, you can definitely see that from your story, and just what you provide in your book are lessons, and many life lessons that people can read in regards to just how to be a better person, resilience and kindness, without having to walk a certain journey, because everyone's journey is different. But for those that are looking to really understand like the depth of resilience,
Yes.
and what that means, it really does mean a lot to different people.
Yes. Resilience is such a great word, because it goes beyond being strong, and resilience, for me, it's resilience, love, and hope. You never give up on love and hope. And in order to do that through trying times, which we all have, Marianne, there isn't a single person I've ever met that hasn't had some, put themselves through some trial in their life. You cannot give up on love and hope. You can't start hating people or saying, I just think that, thinking the worst of a situation instead of looking for the best of a situation only hurts you. So I tell that to my patients, especially my young patients, how important kindness is to complete strangers at the market. If they're having a bad day and you walk up to them and say, oh, here, let me help you with that. Or, oh, that's a beautiful dress you have on, or something minimal. They instantly perk up, and maybe they'll go home and be a little nicer to their children or their spouse or their friend. And that in turn are nicer to their friends. And then I totally believe that the ripple effect and the power, the complete power, maybe I want to say of love, but really just small acts of kindness. I don't know if I kind of got off that subject, but I'm such a huge believer. My mother taught me that. And at 69 years old, every single day I make a point to be kind to a complete stranger. And I think if we all did it, the world would be a better place.
What an ageless lesson that is. Kindness and small acts of kindness and random kindness. It's there's no price tag for that. That means so much to so many people. We really don't know what people are going through. I mean, if someone's having what we would perceive a bad day, maybe they found out that a family member just died, or they lost their job, or we don't know what's going on with other people.
Right. I mean, I was behind a lady in a car, and I was in a hurry to get to Kahului, and she was going so slow, and I'm like, oh God. And I started to tailgate her a little bit to make her go faster, because on Hana Highway, you don't have any choices. It's like one street. And I realized I backed way up, and I thought, wait a minute, she might have just got some bad news. Or maybe she's thinking of something. Maybe she's on their way to the doctor. And I could see through a rearview mirror, she was an older woman. It's so funny when I say older, now at 69. She was about my age. And I backed way up and just gave her lots of space, because I don't know what she's going through. For me to get on her tail or honk my horn, or people flip people off or yell at them, where the hell are you? Look where you're going. They don't know what's happening with that person. I mean, those are the kind of things that we have to be. I don't think we have to be, that I want to be aware of. I want to be aware when I think somebody's walking too slow or driving too slow or not answering my question. You don't know. And people look at me in my practice, and for all intents and purposes, I've been extremely successful. But they would, if I told them that I lived in a broken down trailer in Mississippi with my father's 15-year-old girlfriend, I mean, they'd look at me like, are you nuts? I mean, because it doesn't match the picture of who I am, but it's part of my story. And when I retired, I decided there were two things I was going to do. I was going to get a tattoo, and I was going to write my story, because then if anybody judged me, Marianne, I really don't. I mean, they have their opinion, and I know who I am now.
Well, we know you've written a book, so have you gotten your tattoo yet?
Yes, and I would show you if I could. It's fabulous. This woman, Rachel in Wailuku, she's an amazing woman. And when my mother passed away, I was so, I mean, how do I say this? It took my breath away. I mean, I knew she was almost 96, and I'm so lucky to have had her so long. But when she passed away, I was in such a state of grief. And I've been through grief so much the past 10 years with my siblings, to the point where I almost felt like I was getting clinically depressed, because my whole family was gone. When my mother died, that was it. She was the last. I mean, my father died at 51 of a massive coronary, but that's not surprising. But my mom, when she passed away, all my siblings and my mother are buried on my property here in Haiku on Maui, their ashes. And I have up on the hill, I have a beautiful memorial to my family. But it wasn't even enough. I felt like I wanted to touch her all the time. So the inside of my left forearm the tattoo is about 1 foot long, and it's in memory of my mother. And it's a beautiful lily, because that's her name, is Lily. And she prayed her rosary probably 3 times a day. And there's 3 beautiful, delicate rosaries coming off the lily, and then a spiral, and then a lotus coming out of mud, which is how I've always thought about my life, that I may have been in mud, but lotuses bloom to be these beautiful flowers, even though they have to struggle to bloom coming out of mud. So that's my tattoo.
Oh, and my goodness.
A picture of it is not in the book. But on my website, I have a veronicaslaughter.com, and that is it's the website for the book, and lots of pictures of, because I put very few pictures in the book, like 15. I just didn't want to fill it with pictures, but all the pictures that I was choosing from are all on the website, Marianne, and some stuff about my mom. So the last little bit people have asked me the most is, why did your father do it? And why did you keep your last name? And I thought that was interesting that they should ask about my last name, because Slaughter is my last name. And truly, my son just thinks it's very cool that I'm Dr. Slaughter. And I always say to people, well, at least I'm not a plastic surgeon, but I kept my last name because I don't associate my last name necessarily with my father. This is my ancestry. I come from, on my grandmother's side, who loved us dearly and loved my mother, the mother of my dad. She's a pure Scot. And she always told me that Scots were strong and they were brave. And I love the idea that I love my last name. I don't associate my last name with my father at all. So that's the answer to that question, because I think they think because that was so traumatic, you should just get rid of his last name. No, I got rid of him, but not my last name. And the other question about why my father would do such a thing, did he love you so much that he wanted to, it's actually the opposite. And like I said early in the interview here, is that it was his way, his revenge. We were the collateral damage of his revenge to my mother. And that is the saddest part of all. And I'm a huge women's advocate, children's advocate. I speak whenever I can, whenever I get invited, just to share my story and have other people feel the compassion I feel for single moms and little children and all the things that I personally think that it's harder for women. Not to say that men don't have it hard, but generally speaking, women still only make 70 cents on the dollar, and they have to raise the children.
Well, Veronica, my goodness, we could talk all day. You have, your story, I think, is just so empowering for so many women. Why don't you share with us your website one more time?
It's veronicaslaughter.com. And the name of the book is Have You Seen These Children? And you can get it it's also an audiobook, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all over the place. And if you don't believe me about what it's done for some people, I hate to my mother taught me, you never brag about yourself, but if you read some of the reviews on Amazon, they blew me away. The one thing that was consistent in 99% of the reviews was, once you start, I dare you to put it down. And my Kirkus review said the same thing. So
what an empowering, gosh, get that from Kirkus. You've got to love that. Well, Veronica, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It was easy being with you, Marianne. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Slaughter. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your memoir, Have You Seen These Children? Have You Seen These Children? It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Slaughter, you can at veronicaslaughter.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.